Hello friends, so today we are going to talk about the topic of fruits. So let us start with the topic. Now fruits, if you talk about, fruits are defined as fertilized ripened ovary. Okay, so fruits are defined as fertilized ripened ovary. So this is what fruit means. Now let us say how fruit formation takes place. What are the types of fruits? That is what we are going to talk in this topic. Now we know that this is what we have seen is gynoecium, right? And this is what we have seen is androecium. Now as the pollen grains falls over here, we know that it will develop a pollen tube that will go over here. It will have the male gamete, and that male gamete will fertilize the female gamete over here. Remember, right? So this is how you can say that pollination and fertilization takes place in plants. Now, how we will know that the fertilization has taken place? We know that it also possesses the accessory holes like corolla and calyx. Right? So as soon as the fertilization takes place, let me tell you that this calyx, corolla and the accessory parts will wither away. It will just get dropped down. So if they all fall down, that indicates that yes, the fertilization has taken place. After fertilization, what is happening? Now this is the stalk that remains attached to this ovary. Right? That remains attached to this ovary. Inside the ovary, what is there? There is a presence of ovule. Now if we talk about the structure of fruit, let us enlarge this. Now what is this? We will say that this is the ovary, fertilized ovary, and inside is the ovule. We call it as fertilized ovule after fertilization. So what is basically a fruit? Fruit is this portion. So when the ovary get fertilized, so this fertilized ovary is modified into fruit. And what is this? This is the fertilized ovule. What is this fertilized ovule? This fertilized ovule is modified into seed. And you can take this as a stalk of the fruit, which was previously the stalk of a flower. Right? Alright. Then onwards, you know that in the seed, you have one small stalk-like structure. And this seed stalk-like structure is known as funiculus. Okay, it is known as funiculus. You can say it is a stalk of seed. Now, as we are talking now about the fruit, what is this? This is the outer wall. And this is actually the wall of ovary, because this is ovary and this is ovule. So I am talking about this wall. So this is the wall of ovary. So this wall of ovary, is called as pericarp. So if you talk about fertilized ovary, it is called as fruit. If you talk about fertilized ovule, it is called as seed. और जो ओवरी की वॉल होती है, that is what you call it as pericarp. और सीड का जो छोटा सा स्टॉक होता है, that is what you call it as funiculus. Okay, so basically this is the structure of fruit. और अगर fruit fertilized ovary में से बना है, तो it is known as true fruit. Remember that it is called as true fruit. And if the fruit is formed from unfertilized ovary, let's say here, if the fruit is formed from unfertilized ovary, then it is known as parthenocarpic fruit. Then it is called as parthenocarpic fruit. Example is banana, grapes, etc. Suppose that the edible portion of the fruit is developing from any other part. It may be like thalamus or it can be a peduncle. Then such fruit is said to be as a false fruit. Remember, मतलब इसमें कैसा है ना कि if this ovary is modifying, is getting into the edible portion, then that is what you call it as true fruit. लेकिन अगर edible portion thalamus है या peduncle है जिसे हम खा सकते हैं, तो उस टाइप के फ्रूट को हम क्या कहेंगे? We call it as a false fruit. Okay. So next point is, if it can be fertilized ovary, right? It can have a fertilized ovary, but the edible portion, मतलब जो हम portion खाते हैं, if the edible portion is other than fertilized ovary, then it is known as false fruit. And the example to false fruit is apple, in which we don't eat the ovary but we eat the thalamus. So the thalamus is the edible part. And the another example you can take over here is cashew nut, in which the edible portion is peduncle. Now what is peduncle? The stalk of flower or the stalk of fruit. So that becomes my modified structure. That such kind of fruit is known as the false fruit. So this is all about the brief introduction of fruits. Now next we'll be talking about the types of fruits on the basis of pericarp. So let us understand first of all the areas of pericarp, and then we will discuss about the fruits. Okay. Now types of fruit on the basis of pericarp. What is pericarp? So we know that pericarp is the outer wall. Now basically there are two types of fruits on the basis of the pericarp. If the pericarp is really very dry, okay, so it is known as a dry fruit. So the pericarp is dry. So that is what you call it as dry fruit. So here we will mention that the pericarp is dry. So example to that is, you can write it as trapa, you can write ocimum, that is tulsi. Further you can take the example of apricot, or you can take the example of walnuts, almonds. Okay. So all this in which it's pericarp, उसका जो outer wall होता है वो dry होता है, तो that is what you call it as dry fruit. But if the pericarp is fleshy, if the pericarp is fleshy, that means what? It is juicy. Okay. So in that condition, we will call them as the fleshy fruits. So in fleshy fruits, we will write the description that the pericarp is fleshy, or you can write it as juicy. Okay. In this case, the fruits are described as the fleshy fruits. So, if the pericarp is fleshy, let us take an example. Let's say this is any kind of fruit. Right? This is any kind of fruit we have taken. Any fruit. Okay. And inside this is the seed. Now, this whole portion is what you call it as pericarp. Okay? Is what you call it as pericarp. Now, in pericarp, this is the outer wall. Okay? And this outer wall is known as epicarp. Let me tell you that this whole area is what you call it as pericarp. Now, pericarp is differentiated into three different layers. So outer wall is epicarp, then this comes as the middle wall or the middle layer. So we'll write as outer area or outer region, middle area or middle wall. We can call it as mesocarp. And this just above the seed, this area. Okay, just above the seed, that is the innermost wall. Better we write it as wall, it will do, no problem. Okay, so outer wall, middle wall and the inner wall. So the outermost wall, as I said, it is known as epicarp. The middle wall is known as the mesocarp and the inner wall is known as endocarp. So whenever the fruit is fleshy, its pericarp becomes large and it is divided into 3 further regions. So as I said that this whole area is pericarp, right? So if I will notify it here with the different colors, let's say this whole area, right? So this much whole area. So this, when it comes the outer wall, it called as epicarp, first, second, middle, mesocarp, and the third is the innermost towards the seed, it is known as the endocarp. Now on the basis of this 3 layer, these fleshy fruits are classified into 3 types, right? They are classified into 3 types. So its first type is drupe. Its second type, I am talking about the types of fleshy fruits right now. So its first type is, you can say drupe. The second type is berries. And the third type we will talk for the types of fleshy fruit is pome. So this is what we will be discussing. Remember this fleshy fruit की हमें 3 parts में उसके pericarp को divide किया है. अब इसी के हिसाब से हम इसको further 3 type के fruits में divide करते हैं. Now let us talk further division of fleshy fruits. So as I have told you that fleshy fruits are divided further into 3 types, right? So the first we are going to talk about is drupe. Okay, now these drupe are also called as stone fruits. They are also called as stone fruits. Now we know that this is what we are classifying it on the basis of pericarp. Endocarp, then mesocarp, and the outer one is known as the epicarp. So if I talk about this kind of fruit, let us take an example over here. I have drawn one of this diagram. In the stone fruits or in the drupes, the outer layer, that is epicarp, is skinny. Remember that. What kind of layer it is? It is skinny. Then further, the second layer, that is mesocarp. Mesocarp can be juicy or it can be succulent. वो fleshy रहता है. And then comes the inner part. Okay. And the inner part, that is the endocarp. Endocarp here is hard and stony. It is becoming hard and stony. और इसके अंदर फिर यहाँ पे क्या होगा? This is what you call it as the seed. Now the best example that can be taken for this kind of fruit is you can say a coconut and mango. So example to drupe is coconut and mango. So we all know, like mango, if we talk about, then this is the epicarp. Then inside comes the mesocarp, which just from which we make juice, mango juice. So that is pulpy area. And then comes the endocarp. We know that endocarp is hard. That is covering the seed. and inside this is the seed. So this is what you see about mango. Now if same is the diagram, and if I use it for what we can say coconut, the green coconut right now I'm talking about is. So this outer area is green in color, we know that in coconut, right? Then the mesocarp is whitish in color, and then comes the inner part, the innermost portion, okay, in the coconut, which is brown in color over here. And this is really hard and stony. So such kind of fruit in which the endocarp is hard and stony is known as a drupe or the stone fruit. Now further we will talk about the another kind of fruit, and this another kind of fruit is berries. Now here if we talk about the berries, the outermost layer of pericarp, we know that it is known as epicarp. Here epicarp is skinny, as well as you can write it is juicy. Then comes the second part, that is the mesocarp. Here mesocarp is also, you can say, pulpy or juicy. And again when you talk about the endocarp, right? So even the endocarp here is skinny and juicy. What does that mean? Here there is no stony structure towards the inner side, and the very good example to this is, you can take it as an orange or tomato. All this can be considered as an example of the berry fruit. So example to this is tomato, orange, lemon. After this, so this is all about the berry fruit. After this we'll talk about the third kind of fleshy fruit, and the very third kind of fleshy fruit is what we call it as the pome. Now remember, pome is a fruit which is generally we consider to it as to be a false fruit. So here we will write that it is a false fruit. Why do we call it as false fruit? Though it is developing from the fertilized ovary, but the edible part is other than the ovary. So we will put a point over here. Edible part is other than the fertilized ovary, right? So such fruit, we know that they are called as false fruit, right? They are known as false fruit. And here we will take the example of let's say apple. Now in apple, here comes the ovary and inside comes the fruit, inside comes the seed. But in apple, this whole portion, whatever we eat, right, this whole portion, that is the edible portion. So this edible portion is developed from the thalamus, and that is why we call it as pome or the false fruit. The another example you can take apart from apple in pome is cashew nut. Now we all have seen a cashew nut, hopefully. In cashew nut, this is a peduncle, right? So over here, the peduncle is getting modified into edible portion, which is not an ovary, right? It is not an ovary. So when the peduncle is getting modified and the cashew nut is lying over here, we all know this, right? So such kind of fruit. So the actual ovary is lying over here, the ovule is lying over here, but what you can say, the peduncle is getting fleshy and it is getting modified into the edible part. So in this cashew nut can also be taken as an example of pome, or you can take the example of false fruit. So if you take these fleshy fruits are what you can say classified into three types. Remember, the first is drupe. Generally in this the endocarp is hard and stony, so we call it as a stone fruit. The second one is berry, in which there is nothing like stony, everything is the edible portion. So it is whole a fleshy fruit. Example is tomato, orange, lemon. Further, the last is the false fruit, in which the edible portion is except from from the fertilized ovary, the edible portion is in like it may be a thalamus or it can be a peduncle. So this is all about the classification of fleshy.